Not going down. Page down. Okay. Hello. I just want to talk quickly about Task Force 3. Unfortunately, Task Force 3 was without a head. So Harold wasn't here. So unfortunately, Harold had prepared a presentation of ideas that he wanted to propose to the meeting, but it didn't reach us in time. So we did our own brainstorming and came up with some ideas. And we can see that there is a way of integrating what we did with what Harold has suggested, but obviously, Harold isn't here to be able to do it. So all of this is a little bit tentative, yes? But we had some interesting discussions anyway. So what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the discussions that we have had, where we got to over the thing, okay? So one thing that we spent a lot of time discussing was the fact that there are quite a lot of tensions in forest management. Because we started out by saying that forest management is not simply about idealized silviculture or idealized ways in which we can use the forest to deliver products. Forest management is about that horrible, messy, dirty, real world where you hardly ever achieve your ideals and you always have to compromise and there's always something which is outside your control. So we took that kind of as our starting place. And then we've got all of these usual tensions within what you can achieve as a forest manager or what you would like to be able to do. We've got small scale. What you do in a small scale forest is different from what you do in a large forest. We've got private versus public. What a private owner might decide to do and what the state might decide to do in its forest can be quite different things and for different purposes. We've got, and this was an interesting one which came out, is we've got a tension between wanting to protect resources which are currently being exploited, which maybe we consider maybe becoming overexploited, or we would like to at least bring that exploitation into the purview of forest management. And here we're talking very often about products which are open access at the present moment and are freely available to the general public who use their right to harvest for personal consumption. Okay? So we have that on one side, and on the other side we have the need to promote new income generating activities from the forest. So we're looking at commercialization, we're looking at the promotion of opportunities, very often commercial, and we felt that there is actually a tension between the two, because the best basis for commercialization is to privatize the resource, make it a club resource, make it a licensed resource, restrict access. Whereas the benefits which flow from the open access to the general public are then go down in exchange for the privatization and the income. And this is a tension which is always going to be there, and it's one which is a difficult question. So some of us were talking about promotion and some of us were talking about protection. Yeah? And then alongside that you have this tension between wild and cultivated, which for us as forest managers is possibly not so much, but certainly the others are a source of conflict or of difficult decisions needed to be made. These are kind of just an overview of the kind of issues that we touched upon and kind of inform the proposal that we are making. Is that management is about institutions which enable or empower managers to have control over activities within the forest, as well as just the silvicultural models that we might want to apply. Yeah? So that this is the horrible, messy, real world, not just your idealized where you can control and model everything. There is another task force that's dealing with modeling. We leave them to do that. We will be involved with this. Open access public goods often means that the forest owner is not able to control harvesting. And harvesting very often is the only management activity that takes place. Yes? And as a consequence of that, receives no income or no contribution from the people who are doing the harvesting towards the management of that habitat which provides that resource. So you have a separation between the users who are benefiting from the product and the manager who has the responsibility to take care for the well-being of that habitat. He's not formally charged with producing those products, but he is charged with the well-being of that habitat. And if the well-being of that habitat is going to be compromised by the users, then that's where the management concern then comes in, and we have to see what we can do to resolve that. Because if the product goes missing from the forest, it's the forest manager who will be said, you didn't do your job, not the users for, you shouldn't have collected so much. Do you see? Okay? So the manager has responsibility for the management of that habitat. Although there are many users and many products which flow from that forest, many of which he may not even be aware of, and many of which he probably has very little control over. Okay? So this is our fundamental difficulty as a forest manager. Co-management between forest owners and users is the ideal, that we could have a relationship between the people who use the forest and the people who have responsibility for taking care of it, so that they work together to ensure the good health of that habitat and the continued supply of the products which people value from it. That would be our ideal scenario. We would be obviously interested in case studies where that has been achieved, because we would like to learn how better to build these cooperative linkages. Yes? Other issues, sorry, it disappears off the bottom of the page there, were raised about how we can achieve that. One issue we kept coming back to was human resources, the human resources available to us when we're managing NWFPs. If we have human resources, what those people are supposed to be doing. Okay, so we felt that there are skills gaps in terms of the people who have the necessary skills to do good practice in terms of harvesting. Yes. So how many, sort of like if you want to do resin tapping, and resin tapping, as we heard yesterday, requires a considerable amount of skill to maximize the production. Where can you go to learn how to do that? What facilities do we have for teaching people how to be good and responsible harvesters? And vocational training there for forest workers, to reinvent some of those forest-based lifestyles. We also have a lack of good practice in harvesting techniques, but also post-harvesting, how to actually maximize the production of the product, because you look after it well once you've harvested it, and you get it to market in good condition, well graded, the whole thing. And then I felt that we also lacking in good practice in how to integrate NWFPs into forest management. We have a skills gap in terms of the forest managers themselves, which I think is one of the things that, like the earlier task force is looking at addressing. And then good best practice in bringing products to market. Now that seemed at first a little bit off to one side. Why are we thinking about that? But then if you're a forest manager, there's no point promoting something or advising something if you're not certain that this pathway to market is actually going to work. We had a case example from the Netherlands where somebody set off trying to do something and it fell down because of some institutional problem further down the line. So it may not be that all foresters need to be able to do this, but they need to understand that this is an issue, and they need to know how to cooperate with people who are experts in doing that to be successful. Local products can be linked to tourism, so then we had this problem about how far do we go towards the services provision. Large-scale commercial collection, it can be limited by the availability of labour, and that goes back to your skills. So it could just be simply that you have a problem getting enough people together to do it, especially in Northern Europe where labour rates are quite high and the work in the forest is tough, and the returns might be quite small. But over and above it, you still have the skills gap. How do people have the skills to be able to do the harvesting well? Agroforestry to be included is a kind of question mark. I think that's something we discuss in the plenary maybe. And we decided to overcome this thing about the services and the tourism by saying that we shouldn't really consider anything here which is not based around removal of a product, and that way we keep it based to something tangible. So if you go for a walk with your dog in the forest and you don't take anything from the forest, it's not included. But if you go into the forest and you make a mycotourism which involves picking the mushrooms, then okay, that's begin to be the edge. That's our boundary. Okay. Based on all of this and the difficulties that we were coming up with, we thought This is just very, very, very general. We haven't really gone far into deciding how best to do it. But we could have case studies of a selected management systems where things have worked well. Maybe we have good cooperation with users, or we have very, very nice silvicultural systems which have delivered well. We could have a review of the general situation across Europe. That's our kind of state-of-the-art review. Where are we in terms of forest management across Europe in being able to manage for NWFPs? Yeah? And then a review, say, of management approaches to selected products. These are just very, very, very general, just 3 different ways in which we could approach the actual paper thing. One thing that we thought would be really useful would be to try and collect some data so that we have some idea of where we are across Europe in terms of our ability to be able to manage for NWFPs. So we thought that if we had some general product groups down the left-hand side, and we were thinking we could just take the FAO categories from the slide that was presented on the first day, just general broad categories, then we want to know who manages that resource within the forests in your country. So for some, it's not going to be the forester who actually manages that resource, because that resource might be more the farmer who has responsibility for it. Or it could be that it's open access and it's a wild product, so nobody really has the responsibility for it. Yeah? So then who is doing the collecting? Is it personal use collection? Is it individuals taking it to market? Or is it a very highly organized cooperative structure, or highly organized enterprises who are doing the harvesting? Yeah? And then who is taking that to market? It could be that nobody is taking it to market. It's not allowed in your country. Yeah? Or it could be that we want some idea of what is the pathway to market. Is it individual, or is it going into some complex value chain with yeah? So these are just big classes, not all the detail. And over on the right-hand side, who are the stakeholders who are interested in this NWFP? Yeah? And you might find for some, we have a lot of stakeholders, mushroom collecting associations and blah, blah, blah. For some of them, you might find that the stakeholders who are most interested in it are actually conservation bodies. Say for medicinal plants, you might find it's foresters is not really very aware of it. It's not very well organized, but some of the plant conservation NGOs might be very, very concerned because they have an issue with collection of some rare plant species, okay? So that's just getting an idea of who are the players that are interested in that topic. And if we build this up, we were thinking by country, we then will get an overview of what is going on across Europe in terms of these activities. So that was just really the actors. And then here we come to some more of the institutional framework of what is possible as a forest manager to influence what's happening in NWFPs. So again, we have the same categories here, and we have regulations. What do the regulations say? Yeah, so the regulations might say that this can be licensed or it can't be licensed. Yes. Management models. Are there any management models available for any of these products? Yeah. And that's just basically yes, no, and then we pass the information to the people who are interested in models. Yeah, so that's a cooperation between the two. Training education. Is there any available? Is there a skills gap? Yeah, what is needed? Is anything available? Is something needed? Then control of harvesting. Who has control of harvesting? The regulations would tell you whether it's possible to control harvesting. Where the control of harvesting there is the praxis. What's actually happening on the ground? Is anybody doing it? Yes? And it may not be the forest managers. It may be some other association. It may be an NGO. It may be a professional body somewhere who has some norms, some code of conduct or whatever. So just understanding, is there anybody who is presently trying to do that? The property rights. Who owns those products? Yeah? Is it open access? Is it private? Blah, blah. And then over on the back, the last one, which is a bit of an overlap with the earlier one, who has the rights to manage? Yes? Yeah? Because, the right to manage can be given in law. So the farmer has the right to manage everything on his land. Yeah? But you do not have the right to manage the game, because the right to manage game is given to another authority. Okay? So this we felt was just our kind of starting point, just to understand what is the scope of what's available to us as forest managers to actually be able to address the very complex problem of integrated NWFP management, but moving a little bit beyond just simply the silviculture, but into the practical aspects of what we can do. I'm sorry, but that's as far as we managed to get.